Hey guys, Ruckus Gaming here, coming at you with another episode of Tuesday Tips and Tricks. This is our third installment of the Energy Relics series, and today we're talking about Ectoplasm. Now this is a bit of a special case for the Energy Relics because this can only appear after the first act boss. This cannot appear in any other act. That also creates an even bigger hurdle to taking Ectoplasm because that gives you much less of a chance to build up a bank of gold and use it before you lose the ability to gain any more. So, let's take a look at the deck. We are going to take a look at some of the MVP relics and MVP cards from this run. So, let's just jump straight into it. Old coin was a huge reason why I was able to take this Ectoplasm. I actually traded away all of my gold for a rare relic and was rewarded with more gold. So, with this old coin, I was able to go to 2 shops in the first act. This very first shop on floor 3 was a very good shop for me. I picked up a couple solid cards and a relic. And this second shop didn't have quite as much gold to work with anymore, but I did pick up Doom and Gloom, which was very important throughout the run, and then I removed a strike. Runic Capacitor was one of the very early relics that I picked up from that shop, and it was a huge reason why this run was so successful. Starting with extra orbs can be a little hard if your deck relies on evoking those orbs, but if you can build up those orbs just a little bit and then create many different orbs, they can just sit there and do things passively for you. So you don't necessarily need to add lots of focus. A little focus is always helpful, never say no to it. But with Runic Capacitor, this is just a different way to scale. Instead of adding more focus, we're just adding more orbs. This worked really great with the Doom and Gloom because I was able to let that Doom and Gloom really sit. And it took a lot longer for it to get to the front, and then I could get big dual casts off and kill enemies very quickly. Frozen Egg is something you're always happy to see on a defect run. Getting upgraded powers anytime you see them is a huge advantage. The defect loves his powers, and this deck had a pretty good amount of them. I wouldn't say it was overwhelmingly a power deck or anything like that, but the couple powers that we did have were extremely valuable, and having them upgraded for free gave us more ability to upgrade other cards, like skills and attacks. Data Disc is another way we scaled up. It's only one focus, but when you have lots of orbs, it really adds up. White Beast Statue was absolutely fantastic. One of the main reasons that a lot of people don't like Ectoplasm is because it means that you can't get potions from shops because you can't get any more gold. And White Beast Statue is amazing for mitigating that. Emotion Chip is another great rare relic for defect, especially when you've got extra orb slots. If you've got Inserter, if you've got Capacitor, or if you've just got Runic Capacitor, Emotion Chip is a no-brainer. Tori is another fantastic relic that lowers damage, so you block less. You can spend more energy attacking, and as long as you can get that attack to down to under 5, you're golden. And finally, Bottled Lightning. You see we use that here on a Seek. This means that we always had very, very consistent turn 1s. And if you've been listening, you've heard me say that turn 1s are the most important on any combat because you always have a turn 1. You may not have a turn 2, you may not have a turn 3, you will always have a turn 1. So, relics that are active on turn 1 or make your turn 1 better, more consistent, those are very, very strong relics to have. With Seek in this Bottled Lightning, I was able to look through my deck and find any card that I wanted, but it was basically always the same 2. Now let's take a look at some of those MVP cards. Consume was probably one of the best cards I picked up on this run just because it gave me some good synergy with runic capacitor. I had those extra orb slots and I could trade them for focus. Sometimes too many orb slots does make it hard to really be effective in combat. So one thing you can do is you can build them up, knock them back down, and get stronger for it. Doom and Gloom was another MVP card on this run. I already talked about it a little bit, but as I said before, when you've got extra orb slots, that means it's going to take longer for Doom and Gloom to get to the front, and that means what it finally does is going to be much larger. And if you can time that with a dual cast, even better. Electrodynamics is of course always great for solving AoE fights with the defect. And when you've got more orb slots, that means more lightning, that means more damage. So this was extremely helpful for many fights, especially Act 2 and 3. Of course, as I already said previously, Seek on turn 1 was amazing. It helped me get exactly what I wanted as soon as I needed it. Upgrading Seek and getting a second card is huge value. So if you get a Seek, your number one priority should be upgrading that Seek. Do it as soon as possible. And a Panic Button. Kind of an unusual choice, but the good thing about Panic Button is that when it says you can't gain block from cards, that does not include orbs. When you've got huge frost orbs, when you've got lots of frost orbs, lots of focus, Panic Button has no downside. You just play it, you get 30 block. Maybe you don't have any orbs yet this turn. Next turn, you're gonna have some frost more than likely, so you'll be fine. Defect is the easiest to take this Panic Button on, in my opinion. Now that we've talked about some of the MVP cards and relics, let's take a look and see this deck in action. Alright, we are starting off with some footage from the Nemesis. I have just picked up very recently this bottled lightning with Seek in it, so I'm really putting together the best way to use it, and it is obviously Rainbow plus Fission. This will end up giving us +1 energy and +3 draw when we combine them together. And I just figured that out. So play the Rainbow, play the Fission, do an okay amount of damage, but then draw those 3, get the Dark Shackles. Loop was an unsung hero I didn't really talk very much about in the setup, but you'll see why it's so good as this video continues. Whenever the Nemesis goes intangible, you should start thinking about just setting up defensively because you're not going to be able to do much damage. He's doing 6 times 3, and I've got 6 orb slots with frost orbs that do 3, so I can just full block easily. And that loop actually gives me extra block because it's triggering at the start of each turn. Again, another very quick setup turn there, not great draw. With that loop in that first slot, you can see I'm getting lots of passive block to start the turn. Will be very important later against the Heart. Slowly, passively working him down. I'm mainly trying to get that that darkness orb up to the front. Consume eats that last orb slot. If there's anything in there, it will disappear, so I want to be very careful not to disappear my darkness orb. FTL was also another unsung hero here. Compile Driver, another unsung hero. Lots of extra draw, especially when you've got different kinds of orbs with a rainbow, something like that. Keep a careful eye on that darkness orb because with 2 loops, that is going to go from 23 to 53 very quickly. And Nemesis is dead. Now we are taking on Reptomancer, and we get absolutely beautiful draw. Fission is already in hand, so I go for Electrodynamics for the AoE damage. Get that rainbow in there. Huge draw. And I end up with +2 energy and +6 draw on turn 1. Another rainbow, compile driver, get the loop going. Now I'm just doing setup. I want to make sure I have some block. I also want to make sure I get some darkness orbs going so I can take care of those little guys, or just let them build up big and take out Repto herself. I don't want to deal with her little friend, so I kill him. Don't have quite enough block here, but that's a good thing. With my loops and emotion chip, that goes to 53. And I have a kill as soon as I want it. Now I'm just kind of flexing. I don't really need to continue the combat. I'm just looking for an interesting way to kill Repto. Now that I've got a huge darkness orb, cold snap, and dead. Our Act 3 boss is Time Eater. The thing about Time Eater is that card counter can be tough, and when you get to 12, it's gonna scale up his strength. Now, Defect doesn't really care about that, because with orbs, you can sit back and not really play a lot of cards, and you can let your orbs do a lot of passive work without scaling him up. So I think Defect probably has the least trouble with Time Eater. Happy to see it here. Don't have a lot of Frost orbs, but Panic Button comes right in handy, and I can play my last couple cards to prepare for next turn. I end with a little excess energy just so I don't go over 9. I want to always have at least 3 cards to play, so if that means leaving energy on the table, I will definitely do that. Got my darkness orb in there, full blocking, and now I just want to let that darkness orb cook. A little bit of a strange draw here. I don't really want to use the consume because that darkness orb is in back still, but I don't really draw anything that will allow me to create more orbs. So that darkness orb is just kind of stuck there. I do have cards to play, but again, nothing in my draw pile really creates orbs that I can afford. So I just get that turbo and decide for long-term scaling, I will play the consume. And I'll just get another darkness orb later. I play the Tempest for a little bit of passive damage. Great to generate lots of orbs with only 1 card, lots of energy so you don't scale up Time Eater. Now it's basically over. Time Eater just doesn't know it yet. Compile driver for some draw. And eventually I decide I don't want to weaken just because I don't have a lot of Frost for next turn. And I only have 3 card plays left, so I want to make sure that I've got the flexibility I need to block if possible or if necessary. Here with 3 orbs, Compile Driver is great for drawing more cards. Unfortunately, still don't get much draw or much defend, much block, so I play that loop, and now I just want to try and get the Frost Orb up front for that loop, and that's my turn. I take a little damage, but that's actually pretty good because of emotion chip. I've already played the self-repair, so I'm going to get that back. I've got a heal coming. I'll be okay. This is another kind of a bummer turn. Not a lot I can really do, but I don't really need to do anything either. This is just a matter of time. Another kind of dud turn here. He's going to heal up and I can't kill him, but I do get a buffer. Another reason why Time Eater is so tough, but Defect can deal with it, is because of these passive turns. I don't have to always be doing something because my orbs are doing it for me. Wanted a dual cast, couldn't get it, but that's still 100 damage almost with that darkness orb, and we are entering the final stage of this fight. Slowly but surely we're getting there. One thing that I think is important to realize is that when you play your 12th card, you scale up his strength, and you want to pay attention to his attack, because if it's his multi-attack, that's going to be even worse. If he's doing ×3 and you give him +2 strength, that's 6 more damage. So if you do have to play that 12th card, make sure it's not on a multi-attack turn, if at all possible. And we're going to finally kill with Cold Snap. Now we're taking on Spear and Shield, and this is actually going to be a pretty quick combat. I see my mod telling me I have a 100% potion chance, so I use that strength potion. I don't really care about the strength, but I do want to keep my other 2 for the heart. I don't go for the rainbow, but I do go for the electrodynamics. I already do have 1 rainbow in hand. White noise giving me an echo form was amazing. And so now I can play that electrodynamics. I don't really have much block here. I could play this defend, but I decide that I want the emotion chip tick more. So I'm gonna let it do 1 damage to me, and then it's gonna do more damage to them. Reduce that block, make it a little easier to kill them. And with my electrodynamics and echo form, rainbow is a no-brainer here. Kind of weird draw here. Maybe I could have played this a little bit better. And I probably should have played the self-repair here knowing that I was going to take some damage. But I went for the loop, and it worked out okay in the end. I didn't take that much, and I knew that Spear was basically dead. So play that Tempest, and we're done. And finally, the Corrupted Heart. Don't get any active block in the first draw, so that's kind of bad. Artifact Potion is going to block Vulnerable, which is very important for the turn 2 and turn 3 attacks. It's going to make them much easier to block, so I always love having an Artifact Potion. I use the secret technique to go for block first, because I don't want to take too much Beat of Heart damage. And instead of my usual Fission Rainbow, because of Beat of Death, I'm actually going to go for a loop, so I can get a Frost Orb up front and give me guaranteed block at the start of every turn. But I did kind of blunder here. I took a rainbow and then I couldn't afford it. So I've got Frost Orbs, I've got 2 loops, or I think 1 upgraded loop, and now I only need to block 40, and I'm already doing 32. So I'm pretty well set up here. I actually don't play this Fission because I'm full blocking now, and I also want to make sure I have block for the next turn. I'm playing this a little bit passively and just making sure I get my important scaling going. I get more loops, I get my consume, and now that my orb slots are full, I play that capacity potion for even more orb slots, now that I don't need to worry about if I can evoke or not if necessary. I think I said this already, but FTL was kind of an unsung hero, especially early in the run before I had the rainbow and Fission combo. Was great draw. Just kind of using potions here to play cards. I get the self-repair out of there just so I don't draw it again. Here is another pretty passive turn. I get a Darkness Orb in there. It's not going to be enough to kill the heart, no matter how long we let it cook, but it'll do something. We full block pretty passively, no worries. Unfortunately, this Go for the Eyes isn't going to reduce or weaken the heart yet. Another capacitor from our white noise, thank you very much. Compile Driver won't do me much good here with only 1 energy, so I decided to just go for Melter. And I actually do take 1 damage here, but again, that's great because of our emotion chip. So those orbs are going nuts for us. Here I can just do a little setup and Now I've got another Doom and Gloom because of rebound, so that's going to come back next turn. And we are looking to accelerate into the final phase of this fight. I've got more than enough block, considering I've got Cool-Headed, I've got Fission, I've got Consume still, so I'm not worried about this 72 really. 8 energy there with all of those capacitors and runic capacitors, and my goodness, so many orbs, more than you can shake a stick at. And I'm just kind of playing cards now. I'm not really doing any math. I'm not worried about what the heart is doing. I'm just kind of going for it. As you can see, I'm already full blocking, so I don't really care about, playing my cards in proper order or anything like that. I'm just throwing things out, random bullshit go, and pretty soon the heart is going to be dead. Unfortunately, after we play this Tempest, we are just short of a kill. Not that that really bothers us. I do like to go for unusual kills, so on our last turn, I decide, you know what? Let's kill with a Glacier. And he's dead. Now that we've seen this deck in action, let's talk about some other relics or cards that might have been good, but we didn't get on this run. Bottled Tornado would have been great considering how many powers we had that were very valuable to us and could have been great to have turn 1. Because of the Bottled Lightning, we didn't really need it because we could just use the Seek to get whatever we wanted anyway. But if we hadn't, Bottled Tornado would have been a great addition to this deck. Mummified Hand is always going to be something you're looking out for when you've got defect powers in your deck, just because some of them can be pretty expensive, and being able to create other cards at 0 cost will help mitigate the high energy cost of some of Defect's powers. Pandora's Box could have been amazing because one of the main drawbacks of Ectoplasm is that you're going to really suffer for removes. And transforming cards is basically the same as removing them. So when you have an Ectoplasm, you're really worried about those strikes and defends and getting them out any way you can. Pandora's Box is one way to do that. So is Astrolabe, or even Empty Cage. We didn't need it this run, but Inserter is another one of the fantastic boss relics for Defect that will add orbs passively, and I like that it is every other turn because that means you can start out with 3, you can evoke a couple of orbs really quickly, and then as the combat gets longer, you get more and more orbs, so you don't worry about evoking them because you can just let them sit and do their work passively. When you've got something like Runic Capacitor, Barrage can be a very solid source of damage if you're going more of the physical route, or it can just be a little bit of extra support, even if you're not necessarily very physical damage focused. And this might be something you pick up early in Act 1 anyway, just because you need the damage. So don't overlook Barrage. It's not the best in the world, but when you've got lots of orbs, a little bit of strength maybe from a Vajra, from a Girya, maybe a Jax event, Barrage can be pretty good. Hologram is one of my favorite Defect cards. I always love to have it in there just because reaching into your discard pile and pulling out a card that you need is so valuable. We already had the data disk, but defrag is another way we could have scaled up our focus just a little bit more. Maybe not super necessary considering everything we had already, but in place of other things, it could have suited us very well. Cards like Heat Sinks with all of our powers, or even just a Skim would have been really good. Obviously, we didn't have tons of draw issues. Turn 1s were really great, and sometimes we'd get a Compile driver with 3 orbs, and that would be really great. And there were other turns where we kind of didn't have a dead draw. Didn't really hurt us super bad because of all of our passive orbs, but sometimes it just did make the combats kind of drag on, And if you want to end combats faster, skim, heat sinks, drawing lots of cards is a great way to do it. When you're talking about defect scaling, biased cognition always has to be part of the conversation. Don't be scared of losing focus. Most of the time, especially hallway combats, you're going to kill before the focus completely goes away. It's just going to make the combat end that much faster. You can mitigate this with artifact charges from Clockwork Souvenir or Panacea, or even removing it with orange pellets. So don't be afraid of bias cognition. Take it if you see it. And of course, Echo Form. We did get it once from White Noise, and you saw how absolutely silly it was with some of the combos we had, like Rainbow. So this could have been absolutely amazing for speeding up those longer combats. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. I hope this was helpful and informative and showing how you can work around Ectoplasm. It's not one of my favorite relics, to be sure. Everyone loves going to shops and snapping up lots of cool things inside of them, but there are ways around it. You can look for removes and transforms from relics or even events. And if you have something like White Beast statue, if you've got bottle relics, if you've got egg relics, the no gold won't hurt quite so much. So don't be too scared to take it, but it does require you have a little boost early in Act 1, so it's not so bad. If it came at the end of Act 2, it might be a little bit easier to take, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't. It's only Act 1. As always, thank you guys for watching, and have a great day. This has been Ruckus Gaming.